Good afternoon, everyone. This is Joe Scarice, your founder and co-host of the Creative Birth Strategy podcast. We provide education, networking, and strategy. Traditionally, we have a podcast every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, live with Clubhouse, as well as all our social media channels. And now we're going to be rolling out into the new year in season two, some one-on-ones. And I've got our first one-on-one today, which I'll be introducing in just a quick second. We have over 80 episodes of education on our website at creativebirthstrategies.com, or you can always reach out to me at josephscarice.com on my website as well. And I'm a senior loan analyst at Landmark Capital, and we're here to hopefully have uh, detailed discussion on property management with Sam Eddinger with Ironclad Property Management. It's based out of Central Connecticut. Sam, thanks for coming on this afternoon.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I'm excited about this podcast.
Well, we're all little legends in our own mind, so we'll try to be a little humorous to this, and we take some. We're in the same region, which is always nice. So we kind of drink from the same, I guess, sewer system of craziness in real estate. I see a little background on yourself. Yeah, you're currently managing some of your own properties, 50 plus residential units throughout Central Connecticut, commercial properties as well. You're flipper, do some private lending. You're partnering on some creative financing deals. But give me a little overview about Sam and who he is and how did it all kind of tie into property management?
Yeah, so got my start. My father was a shop teacher, and my father, what I learned from him in real estate is number one secret of real estate is to never sell. And so, I saw this man on a teacher's salary essentially acquire a multi-million dollar real estate portfolio. And to be honest with you, I felt like I could do it better than he could, just because I have the analytical mind, whereas he was just more or less just going with the flow and finding opportunities and buying them. I figured I could do a lot more strategic. So I started buying around 2012. All my brothers and I all buy real estate, and started buying about 2012, continued doing that. Was an engineer during that time, and so I used my W-2 income as the means to buy stuff. Back in that time, Joe, I don't know if you remember, but it felt like it was shooting fish in a barrel. I was trying to help encourage people to buy everything, all my friends, and no one wanted to listen to me at that point. And now years later, they're all like, "Hey, Sam, I should have bought with you." So fast forward to 2018, I pretty much had hit my glass ceiling in being an engineer. And so because I had all of that real estate to fall back on, I was able to quit my job, even though I had six kids and a wife who didn't work. I was able to quit my job and start full time into property management. My brother owns a property management company in Central Connecticut as well. So I was able to really get a leg up and incubate underneath him and his property management company. And then in 2020, we fully divorced. That was always the plan. And so I've been full time doing it since 2018, but on my own since 2020. So almost 5 years now.
So with your general experience and qualifications, obviously, where did the property management piece come in with ownership, and then so now you're managing other people's properties? Was it strictly maintenance in the beginning? Was it full blown management? Did you have a software in place? What type of homework did you do to kind of prepare yourself to be a property manager for someone else other than yourself and your holdings?
Yeah. So when I was an engineer, my brother actually ran my portfolio of property management. And so, like, I didn't actually do any property management back in 2012 through 2018. And so when I incubated underneath him, my brother's a very smart guy. And so I was able to really leverage a lot of the learnings and teachings and software and technology and processes that he had been thinking about for the preceding 5 or 6 years. And so I didn't actually have to do that much real homework legwork. I just kind of said, okay, what works for him? What can I replicate? The big difference between what he was doing for property management and what I was doing for property management is he was strategically starting to focus on what we call accidental landlords. These would be people that maybe got a property due to an inheritance. Maybe someone that was going to move internationally for a couple years and wanted someone to handle it for them. Whereas I was really strategically focusing on investors. And I had already spoken that language because I was an investor since 2012. So, we really were able to divorce very, very well because of our difference in the ideal demographic that we were looking for. But I was able to also leverage a lot of the software technologies, experiences, learnings, best practices from him.
So divorce is not always good, but it sounds like it was a amicable breakup, which is nice to hear, and families hopefully stay together, in at least family statuses. You know what I mean?
It
Because
was always the plan, Joe. It's just I was
yeah, yeah,
underneath him initially, and then,
got
but
it.
he just wanted me to go off on my own for a lot of
Hmm.
reasons, liability and otherwise.
Yeah,
So.
makes a lot of sense. So, what type of services do you offer now, and what do you think you offer differently to the client right now in Connecticut? I know Connecticut's not the friendliest of landlord tenant world in our country. So, what type of services are you offering now, and more so over the last 12 months going into 25?
Yeah, so I, we've pretty much offered the same services that we have for the last 6 years. Um, with respect to property management, we're a full service property management company, which means we source vendors, we deal with evictions, we deal with collections, we do everything that needs to occur. What I would say is we've been in the last 12 months, we've been leaning into a few different things a lot more. So one of it is how to get good information on your tenants so that you can make a decision about whether or not you should be increasing the rent more, you should be leaving the rent fixed, things like that. So one of the ways we do that is we actually have partnered with a company that does self-inspections. And so the tenants themselves have software that they could use and they could take pictures of their kitchen, their bathrooms, their everything that they basically have in their property. And that gives us information about whether or not they're continuing to maintain the property. Just like if a person has a party, they're going to clean up for their guests prior to the party occurring. We know that if we can get the residents to clean up a few more times throughout the year, that's going to naturally allow them to maintain the property better than if they're a hoarder and lo and behold, they're going to start their hoarding tendencies. That gives us a lot of great information. If a tenant is for some reason not willing to do that, that's a reason why we will then go out there and do our own inspection. So it gives us a lot of great information to be able to make a lot of really good determinations of this is a great tenant, this is an average tenant, or this is a really poor tenant.
So that ties in kind of to my next two questions that I had. One is like, how is tenant relationships based on the discussion you have with your client, your borrower, the individual that owns the property, and is there different levels of tenant relations with you in the property management space with your clients? And then how's maintenance and repairs tie into tenant relationships, and how much does that coincide?
Yeah, so we treat all tenants the same because there's obviously fair housing rules that um, would apply if we gave preferential treatment to one tenant over another. But with that said, there's certain tenants that require more of our attention. So tenants that are always late on rent, obviously they require more of our attention than someone that is paying timely. We're frequently starting evictions on them. But we keep policies in place so that we respond to tenants relative to an incident, whatever issue is coming up currently. So, if they're bringing in a pet, we have a policy for that. If they're, being a nuisance, we have a policy for how we handle tenants that are nuisances in our properties. So, we don't really give one tenant better treatment than another tenant. We treat them all the same. With that said, if they're, violating the lease, if they're doing things like that, we obviously are going to do have to do things about it. One of the things that we do and we specialize in is what we call behavioral leases. So everyone's lease that owns real estate is going to say things like you can't smoke in your property, right? But when you say something like you can't smoke in your property, the only recourse that you have is to document that they're smoking in the property, In Connecticut, there's something called a CAPA notification, which is a notification that they're in non-compliance in the lease and they have 15 days to rectify the situation. And then after that, then you ultimately can evict for that lease violation. So if you just say don't smoke in your unit, then you have to go through this process to try to evict them. Whereas my lease very specifically says if you smoke in the unit, I'm going to now charge you immediately for remediation efforts. So it doesn't have to go through an eviction process to be adjudicated. It can just basically I can charge them for things. So every single section of my lease, there's a charge for things that they don't allow me to do or they're in violation of the lease, so that I can actually have some teeth behind me and not have to go all the way to an eviction process. I don't know if you have other questions about that. Otherwise, I can go to your maintenance question.
Yeah, I'm going to skip a little bit because I'm going to go dive into the legal compliance.
Sure.
From the eviction perspective, I've been to several landlord meetings up in the Connecticut market. None of it ever comes out in a very positive nature. It seems very tenant friendly, the state of Connecticut. How do you handle and facilitate this for your clients in such a hostile, non-landlord friendly state? And what do you lay out? What type of tracks do you lay out for them from the beginning? And does that
Yes.
change over time?
Yeah. So in this one, we explain that in the state of Connecticut, lease evictions can take 4 to 6 months at times. And so we start the process as early as possible. So Connecticut actually recently passed some laws that have caused me to move up my eviction process. So it used to be that I can charge a late fee that was appropriate or deemed to be. It was kind of specifically vague. It wasn't like, what you can charge as a maximum or a minimum. It was just it had to be reasonable. And so we did charge a fee for that. But recently, they've made it very prescriptive as to what that late fee is. And I always use the late fee as a means to try to, encourage people to pay the rent early, right? Because if my late fee was higher than maybe a credit card bill late fee, well, then they're going to pay my rent first before they're going to pay their credit card. And so that was always been my experience. But now that this rule is such the way it is, every single late fee is more adversarial, uh, more not as having as much teeth as mine. And so people will pay their car, they'll pay their credit card. And so what we see then is people then don't pay their rent. We're actually having a lot more delinquencies. And so because of that, we're actually starting evictions faster, whereas we usually used to start it between the 15th and the 18th. Now we start it from the 11th to the 14th. So we've moved it up about a week. And the reason for that is, like we said, you just have to get the process started. Because if you don't get it started, you're just losing more and more time. Because Connecticut really is not wanting to work with landlords. They have a lot of things that they think are helping the residents, but are actually hurting great residents. And so we just start the process. We educate the owners. We educate them. It's a very long process, and that we have to start it and that we stop it very quickly, if ultimately they make the payment that they're supposed to, so that the owner is made whole.
So, from a financial management, communication, and reporting perspective, it sounds like your proceedings, there's a lot of reporting, okay, a lot of documentation. Now, you don't personally get involved with the eviction. Your attorneys that work through your property management company facilitate that. And how is that worked through communication wise? Is that through a software where, like, are you using Buildium or Appfolio? Like, where's your vision with your CRM system to stay, hand in hand with your clients?
Yeah, all great questions. So Connecticut, in the state of Connecticut, if you're an LLC, you can't represent yourself, and so you have to pay for legal lawyers. And it has to be an attorney. It can't be like someone that's not an attorney.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
most of our clients are own property in an LLC, and so it's just the definition we have to use a lawyer. So that does that. We do use Appfolio and a lot of other software. But we do have one that's called Lead Simple, which is both a CRM and a process automation software. And so we built out a whole eviction process. And so we think about evictions very much in stages. So the first stage is a notice to quit. And at that point, we just file the paperwork ourselves, and we work with a marshal to be able to serve the notice to the delinquent tenants. If the tenants don't pay their rent, then we end up sending it over to the lawyer to start the summons and complaint. Because at that point, you have to be making actual filings with the state. Then you have the answer and appearance. You have all of these other things, hearings scheduled, judgments, and then finally, final evictions that can occur. And so, what we do is we then in Connecticut, you can actually go into your filing and you can actually say that you're interested in finding out when there's any updates that occur. And so then what we can do is we can actually provide that timely feedback to the owners to let them know where in the process it is. So that's kind of our process is it's to kind of micromanage the lawyers because some of them are really, really not very process focused. And then be able to make sure that they're hitting their deadlines. And we have a bunch of process steps along the way to search to see if they're hitting their deadlines, but also to be asking follow-up questions. Why is it that we haven't had the summons and complaint? Why is it we haven't had the answer and appearance? Because we know that time is money in this business.
So, listen, you don't want to take on every client, of course, because there's a lot of bad clients out there. How do you vet your clients at this point? It's more of an interview process on your side because once you take on that responsibility, you've taken on a very serious responsibility. You're basically driving the boat. So, what do you do to vet yourself away from the bad element of landlords that are in Connecticut, from that you think has helped you with your maintaining a solid portfolio with your clients?
Yeah, so we niche out very, very specifically. So we're not very broad in the things that we do. So we don't do industrial, we don't do short-term rentals, we don't do commercial in a big way. I do manage my own personal commercial and a couple other units, but usually those commercial units are tied to significant residential units. We don't do HOA. So we've niched out very specifically. We also don't manage much of the state. So we like to be about a 45-minute drive from our headquarters, basically in Middlefield, which is near Meriden and Middletown. And so in those ways, we're very much geographically constrained and by type. Then we also do niche out by owner, right? And so we ask ourselves three questions when we're vetting owners. Is the owner emotionally stable? Is the owner financially stable? And is the owner realistic in expectations, right? And if they're financially stable, emotionally stable, and realistic in expectations, we'll take on anyone, even if the property is in a bad area. We also don't currently manage in Hartford and Waterbury because the demographic of the clientele or the residents are a lot harder than other ones. So we're looking to be C minus all the way to probably B class and then specific areas that we're willing to manage. And the owner side is very hard. I've met an owner and I saw like stains that look like blood stains on a carpet. And I'd asked the question, I said, "What are you doing about that?" And the owner would be the owner was like, "I'm doing nothing about that. What do you mean?" And I was like there's significant staining. And I always think about it myself, and this is the way I say it is if you would not move your family into that property, then why are you trying to move someone else's family into it? Right? Because it's for me, it's not about money. It's about like providing a great service to these clients and to these residents. And so I want to be aligned with them on how it is that I provide the service that I provide. And that's one of the big ones is like if you yourself would not live here, then why would is it that you want someone else to live here? Because you're only going to get a tenant base that is not very good. That's going to damage and destroy the property, not pay rent timely. And so we want to find the best tenants to be able to put into our properties, not the ones that no one else wants.
So, say a landlord's not it's not going well. It's just
Sure.
not going well, right? And you got to end the agreement with the landlord. What are some steps, to I'd say unburden yourself of the relationship? I mean, do you try to hand it off correctly? I'm sure you've encountered this. So, you know, how do you handle it as a property manager, and also not to jeopardize the safety of your tenants, which are going to be your former tenants as well, and they could be your future tenants. You know what I mean, for other opportunities.
Yeah, so usually in those situations, there's been some adversarial things, right? Like sometimes it's about being disrespected. Sometimes it's about an incomplete vision on where we want to go versus where they want us to go. So and the biggest time that we're gonna essentially fire a client, is when they treat us as an assistant. They don't value us as a partner, right? Like I think every single one of my clients have less properties than I currently own. So if you still think that you know more than me and you have to actively micromanage me and my team, like you're not going to be long for this company because it's just inconsistent with how we're trying to operate and do the things that we are. So then we just have a conversation. We say, look, like it's obviously not working out because, you're trying to do something. You're trying to like use us as an assistant, and we are much more valuable than an assistant. And if you can't get over the fact that we can provide significant value to you, then ultimately, you should go find someone else that's going to be more helpful and accommodating to what it is that you're looking for in a property manager. And I
Right.
think most of the time they understand that fundamentally that like we're not a fit because we're trying to do things that are not like that. So, probably the demographic or that would be the least of a fit would be the slumlord, right? Because
Mm.
what they're trying to do is they're trying to get everything out of the property right now to the detriment of the future. They're not strategically repairing, remodeling, uh, doing, kitchen remodels when they're needed, doing, redoing the roof, putting in new heating systems when, it constantly is failing. They're just kind of limping it along and keep band-aiding it. Like those would be people that we would, long term be looking to get rid of because the fact that, you know, how can we in good conscience tell the residents that we're doing the things in their best interest when we can't get the owner to do the things that we know need to be done? So those would be situations where we would get rid of an owner.
So two more questions, and I think they'll hit on. I think you'll enjoy these questions because of your background. Where do you see AI complementing your property management company and yourself over the next 24 months since AI is here? And how are you using it now, and how do you see it expanding your business and changing your role in your business over the next 24 months?
Yeah, Joe, you're right. I do love that question. So, a lot of people use AI as a means to be more efficient and effective. But what I realize as a father of six, whose kids are addicted to social media like everyone else's kids, is connection through social media is not real. And people are searching and looking for human connection. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to leverage AI with the administrative functions, the non-value add, specifically so that we can make more meaningful connections with every single person we interact with every single day. And that's what I'm tasking my team with is how can we make this connection more exceptional? How can we make this connection more meaningful? How can we make this connection better? Right. And I think that's really where the intersection of AI and humans are. AIs can do a lot of things that are important, but don't really add significant value. And you can use the time and the people that you have to make human connection to try to like just brighten up people's day. And to me, I think that's the future because when you do that, along with providing great maintenance, which I know we skipped over, that is when you're going to have happy residents that stay in units longer. And that's what we're really looking for because we know the enemy is really turnover. If you have a good
Yeah.
tenant that's paying their rent timely and they don't leave, you're making way more money than if you're turning a tenant every 2 years.
So, what's the future of Ironclad Property Management over the next 24 months to 36 months? We have six children here. Any of them potential taking doing a hostile takeover of the company one day, or anybody aspiring?
Maybe, so they do and they don't. They're all busy with their activities, and I'm trying to, like, in the same way, index them to connection. So I encourage them to do sports teams. I encourage them to do sleepovers, just to have real human connection, get off the devices, go outside. So yeah, I would love for any of them to take over. If they don't want to, I'm not going to force them to do. One of my goals that I've had when I decide to retire is to help encourage any of my family or any of my nieces, nephews, my grandchildren, my children to become entrepreneurs if they want to. And so that is an exciting prospect. But no, my oldest daughter is currently 16, so she will not be in the next 36 months taking over the company. But like again, 10 years from now, I won't. It definitely could happen. But where's Ironclad going in the next 36 months? We're definitely leaning into this whole concept of, leveraging AI, and also, but trying to provide human connection wherever possible, internally as a team, and also externally with all the people that we interact with. And so we're hoping through doing this and through really trying to do the best job we can, we'll be able to double in size within the next 36 months. It's been
And how many
very,
doors? How many
we
doors are you at now?
about 300.
Okay.
So I want to be at 600. So,
Yeah.
it's very difficult, especially in the state of Connecticut, for a lot of reasons to grow. But that's the goal. That's been the target that I've been shooting for is 600 within the next 2 or 3 years. And if I could do it sooner, I would love to. But it's very hard out there in Connecticut. A lot of people have what the Puritan work ethic. And so my dad, all this time he had two sons that managed property. And we both managed very well, but both very highly respected in the state of Connecticut. And he didn't have either of us manage until recently. He signed on with me, and so I'm going to be managing his about 20 properties starting in January. So, but yeah, we're definitely trying to grow, and trying to just continue to be out there and make connections with all of the real estate investors in the state. We provide lots and lots of value to them, just like you do with this podcast, because we know how hard it is to manage in the state of Connecticut. And we try to just help them do it the best they can because we know that, like karma, it just comes back around.
What's the best way to reach out to you to have a one-on-one with you or some of your teammates in your company? And is there any website information? How do we get in touch with you and to discuss opportunities in Connecticut?
Yeah, so we do have a website. We're actually revamping it right now. It's ironcladpm.com. That's IRONCLAD. P as in Peter, M as in Mary.com. You can email me directly. It's Sam, SAM, at ironcladpm.com. I'll spell that again. IRONCLAD, P as in Peter, M as in Mary.com. I also return all the voicemails that people send me. I don't pick up the call because I do get a lot of solicitation at this point. But leave a voice message. I'd happy to call anyone back. My direct phone number is 860-254-7343. 860-254-7343.
Sam, I'd like to thank you for coming on to the Creative Birth Strategy podcast. We were going to have this up and it's live right now on Facebook, but we're going to have a cut and edit it back to you with all the proper trims and edits so you could share this with other colleagues of yours. I want to thank you for coming on here. And again, if there's somebody else that you might think might be helpful to want to enhance their business, get their presence out there known, please, by all means, let us know. And thank you again for stopping in at the Creative Birth Strategy podcast.
Thanks, Joe. This was fun.
Thanks, Sam. Everybody have a great afternoon. This is Joe Scarice, co-founder and co-host of the Creative Birth Strategies podcast, bringing you one-on-ones throughout the month and then every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll see you soon and have a great day. Thanks, Sam.